children Elizabeth Woodville had with her second husband. Sometime in March of 1477, Elizabeth gave birth to a son called George. He was born in Windsor Castle. George was made Duke of Bedford in 1478, is most likely when he was an infant, after the former holder of the title, George Neville. George died only at the age of 2. It was most likely he died of bubonic plague due to it breaking out everywhere at the time. He was buried in St. George's Chapel at Windsor Castle on March 22nd, 1479. 2 years later, in 1479, Elizabeth gave birth to another daughter called Catherine. She was born on the 14th of August, 1479. Her date of birth isn't exactly confirmed, but it was most likely due to historical documents that she was born around this date, or even a little bit earlier. The supposed place she was born was Effingham Palace in Greenwich. Catherine was the sixth daughter and ninth of the 10 children of King Edward IV and Elizabeth Woodville. Catherine's wet nurse was Jane or Joanne, wife of Robert Corsolan, who in November 1480 received from the king as an Antony payment of £5 per year for her services. From birth, Catherine was a very much active and desirable bride, and she could be a future pawn in political and dynastic marriages. Soon after her birth in 1479, a proposal was received from Catherine to marry the Catholic monarch John, Prince of Arcturus, who was a year older than the princess. John was the heir to a big fortune. His parents were Isabella I of Castile and Ferdinand II of Aragon. He was the only male heir, and he had other sisters, 2 of them being Catherine of Aragon and Juana of Castile. The 28th of August 1479, primarily marriage agreement was conducted. On the 2nd of March 1482, this agreement was ratified by the Spanish side. However, in April of 1483, the princess's father suddenly died. After that, the negotiations were terminated. In 1419, shortly after Catherine's 16th birthday, she was married to William Courtenay, son of the heir of Earl of Devon. The nobleman and a landowner in Devonshire who was an ardent supporter of Henry VII and whose family had been ardent supporters of the Lancastrian cause during the Wars of the Roses. Later into the couple's marriage, William was arrested and sent to prison on suspicion of participating in a conspiracy of the Yorkshire pretender to the throne, Edmund de la Pole, spent several years in prison, although there was no evidence of his guilt. The most likely reason he was arrested was because of his marriage to the House of York. February of 1503, Queen Elizabeth of York died. It was a big loss for Catherine, and they were really close. Elizabeth died in childbirth, giving birth to her youngest child, Catherine. Since Catherine was left without friends, she turned to the help of her father-in-law. He was a very kind father-in-law, allocated an annual allowance for his grandchildren, 100 marks for Henry and 200 marks for Margaret. However, for Catherine herself, probably no funds were associated, since there were no documents confirming the opposite. King Henry VII died in April 1509, and the life of Catherine herself changed dramatically. She was now the new aunt to Henry VIII, who immediately invited and insisted she come to court. When she attended the funeral of the late monarch, Henry paid all of Catherine's expenses related to moving it to the court. At the same time, Catherine received the post of maid of honour to the younger sister of King Mary. She was later the Queen Consort of France. Another fun fact is Catherine also became the godmother to King Henry VIII's young son, Henry, Duke of Cornwall, who was born on the 1st of January 1511. He is mostly known as the New Year's baby, but he died at only 52 days old. Catherine's husband died on the 9th of June 1511. He died of pleurisy, the palace of Pecnita, where he was staying with his wife at the time. Catherine died on the 15th of November 1527. She was 48. She was buried on the 3rd of December in 1527 at St. Peter's Church in Treverne. Catherine gave birth to 3 children. She gave birth to 2 sons and 1 daughter. Her children were Henry, Margaret, and Edward, who died in infancy. 10th of November 1480, Elizabeth Woodville gave birth to her last child and last daughter, Bridget of York. On the 9th of April 1483, when Bridget was not even 3 years of age, Edward IV died suddenly. This was followed by a political crisis that dramatically changed the position of the former queen and her children. There are conflicting reports as to whether Bridget was at the sanctuary with her mother. Mary Ann Everett Green writes that there were amounts that indicated the princess was in poor health. That left Elizabeth with a lot of medical bills. Probably after birth, immediately, her parents began to consider sending their daughter to a monastery where she would devote herself to religious life. Her uncle, Richard I, wanted to marry her off to one of his followers, but Henry VII began to make marital plans for his wife's relatives and initially Bridget. She was considered as one of the 2 possible brides for James, Duke of Rosenberry, and the heir to the Scottish throne, the alternative option being her elder sister Anne, Marity unnamed. Bridget expressed her big desire to become a nun and was chosen as the bride of the Duke of Rosenberry along with her other unmarried sisters. She was briefly considered in 1489 as a bride for Gagan Gazzello Zafara, Duke of Milan, although in respect Bridget, at least in debate, quickly fizzled out. Bridget ended up becoming a nun and staying in the monastery. The princess's death is unknown according to voucher sources. This happened before 1513, approximately in 1517. Bridget was laid to rest in the choir of the Priory Church. The tombstone, a ledger stone laid on the floor at the choir, was probably destroyed or refused in 1541. And that's all of Elizabeth Woodville's children with her second husband. Hope you enjoyed this little series.